Hi, how are you doing? It's really a beautiful day out today, isn't it? Oh, would you like some gum? Help yourself. Well, you just finished quite a big project. Weeks 1, 2, and 3, all about lesson planning and lesson design and making sure that you have closely and carefully calculated everything you want to do and say with your students in order to meet the objective well. The first week, you had the baseline lesson plan, then you went into group mixed ability and flexible grouping, and then of course this last week, tiered lesson planning. Those lesson plans were very summative. In other words, you can use parts of all of the things that you did now to be the kind of differentiated teacher that you want to be. Now that we're walking away from lesson planning, though, I would like to leave you with these few thoughts. Sometimes lesson planning can be minimized because of the difficulty of getting it done with all the needs that we have to meet with our students, with their parents, with our administrators. Sometimes a kind of mythology begins, and people start saying, well, we don't do it that way in the real world. Well, I just wanted to remind you that to be very good at differentiating, lesson planning is totally important because you have to have that metacognition uh, to really think about all those places in the lesson where students need extra support or they might need more access than you're giving them to the content. If you're not writing out your lessons and thinking about what you're going to do, how can you be sure that your objective and your assessment match? How can you be sure that your opener is really asking students to connect with their prior knowledge, and how do you know that they haven't already learned what you are going to teach? Well, planning for success is really, really critical. I was trying to think of a good example of that today, and the last couple of months, um, this we have had quite a few economic problems as a country, and my husband and I, along with many other people our age, have had real difficulty with their retirement funds because there's been such a drop in the interest level and everything. So I was thinking, lesson planning is kind of like that. My husband and I have been planning for our retirement for 15 years. Even though it'll be probably another 15 before we really do decide not to work. Now, I could have just said, well, I'll just send this money in. I won't really pay attention to it. I'm not really sure it's going to be enough. I'm not really sure that I'm putting stocks in good investments. And I could have kind of just taken that haphazard stance. And then when I retire, the things that I needed may not be there for me or my husband. I was thinking about it with our, it's very comforting to know that we have a GPS in our car. But if I start out on a trip and I don't have the address, that GPS isn't going to be very useful to me. Well, those are just two examples of that should relate to lesson planning. I always try to say to people, the front loading of a lesson, or that time that you spend planning your lesson, is in some regards as critical or more critical than the lesson implementation itself. How do you know if you are putting in all the accommodations that you can possibly do if you aren't thinking through it and creating this good design? Okay, after being on my soapbox a little bit, let's go on to Module 4, which is turning the corner, so to speak. Because now we are going to be looking a little more passionately at special education and the disabilities and exceptionalities that we think and talk about. The objective for Module 4 is participants will gain an understanding of educational disability and giftedness. Module 4 is going to be broken up into 2 weeks. In week 1, you are going to be placed in a community of learners. It will be your responsibility to develop a relationship and a bond with those learners, and then as a whole group, you are going to research an exceptionality. In week 2, you as a group are going to take the information that you've learned from week 1 of Module 4, and you are going to create a PowerPoint with audio presentation to an audience, maybe an audience of parents, maybe an audience of special educators, maybe an audience of principals, maybe an audience of community leaders. I haven't given you that information yet, but you're going to have this, what I think, kind of an exciting time where you're going to have time to research and create something that you can use in the future. So, having said that, get at it and go ahead and go to step 1 in Module 4.